Hello there. Welcome to Fate Mag Radio, the online voice of Fate Magazine. I'm Kat Hobson, your host, and I'm so glad that you're here. This has been a, a, a month, really, that I've been dreaming about happening for so long because I've seen craft in the sky that were not airplanes or helicopters. And so I've always thought, well, gosh, where is that coming from? And I'm a sky watcher. I'm a dog walker. I am a beach person. I sit out on the sand and I watch the skies. I think they're beautiful. And I suck at finding constellations, but I'm good with Orion. But it's really something that has always spoken to me. I think that there's nothing prettier or more relaxing or, you know, a beautiful night sky just moves me in all the great ways. So when we started having all this big UFO flap going on, and like I said, I've seen them, I know they're there. It's really something that I thought, oh, come on. We know they're here. Why are people afraid to tell us? You know, um, I have always said that I've been doing, radio for 10 years now, and I do UFO stuff on paranormal experience as well. But Fate magazine was the first edition was the Kenneth Arnold story for the cover. And from that point on, we cover everything anomalous. We do cryptids, we do ghosts, we do, you know, people that are out of time, things like that. We do everything because everything is interesting. And, but our first cover was the Kenneth Arnold story. And he was the person who was flying home one afternoon and had 7 craft go by him when nobody was talking about this. I mean, it wasn't something that was really a thing. And he reported it. He was a businessman. He was wealthy enough that, when he spoke, he had a little pull, I think. But mainly, he was the first experiencer that was taken down, and his story really worked. He was absolutely positive. The reason they're called saucers is because he was talking about them, and they said, "Well, what did it look like?" Well, they look like saucers, like coffee cup saucers, and that's why they're called saucers. But it's really so bizarre because I have talked to experiencers for 10 years on air. And, I've talked to people who have had relationships with their abductors. I've talked to people that are absolutely petrified that they're going to come back. I've talked to people who just kind of have a friendship. They feel safe, but they don't go seeking that, right? Because, not going to lie, I think it would be trippy dippy. And so I've talked to people that feel like they had children with their abductors. The children aren't here. They had disappearing pregnancies. So one of them did not have disappearing pregnancy. She actually knows her child. So there's that. But it's really an interesting concept to have been, people have been ridiculed from, well, the 40s. Kenneth Arnold saw them. He didn't get ridiculed. After that happened, then people started, oh, well, we can't have this becoming a mainstream thing. We've got to put this to the side. And so the making people look foolish, ridiculing people that came forward became the way to go about things. The only reason you would do that is if you were doing something with them that you didn't want known. And so, why else would you discredit the average bear walking down the street just for saying, I saw this? When you know darn good and well that you are interacting with them. This is not just random stuff. This stuff coming out is not random stuff. It's the most bizarre. It is. It's the most bizarre thing that I've seen, how fast this happened. And I don't know if this is happening this quickly because they're going to be revealing themselves. Maybe they are going to show up on the White House lawn. We got the guy that would welcome them there, right? He is all about showmanship, and he's all about getting stuff out. I'm stunned that this is happening, but we needed a disruptor for it to happen, and we got one. So, as I've been going through these files, I've seen stuff that I recognize. I've seen a lot of stuff I haven't. And I've got some files that I'm going to show y'all tonight. But you can go and look. If there is an incident that you're looking for, I think that you will find a way to search for it. You go to the Department of War website, or you can just pop that in Google, because I'm telling you, they're getting hit left, right, and center. They are getting people looking. They're getting eyes on it. And what's really happening is that you cannot, I downloaded files to share here. They are so protected. I can't show them. I can read them. But I can't put them up here. They are pretty harsh with the penalties. I was surprised. I really was surprised. I don't know why that is, because ostensibly they want us talking about this, but it's not happening. There you go. But I do have some stuff, and I have really been enjoying myself playing with these files. I've been on there all week. But if you're interested, like I said, they have different ways to look at them. And my internet appears to be slow right now. I don't know what's going on with that. But probably because I'm talking about this. So, Carl, there might be some glitches. And, I'm going to ditch this because that lettering is getting on my last nerve. And that's my hangout shirt, guys. I go to the hangout in Gulf Shores all the time. Oh, look, I'm hung up. I look like I'm being hung. So, Carl, what am I going to do about this glitching? Just roll with it?
Yeah, you're going to have to. I think it may be in your computer because you got that other browser opened up.
Let me shut everything else.
Shut everything down.
Okay. Okay. All I have open is here. I shut down the DOD file or DOW page. We can go back to that if we need to. But again, as I got hung up, trapped in my chair, in fact, I've seen stuff at the hangout, and it wasn't with alcohol involved either. If you go to Gulf Shores, Orange Beach, the hangout is right there at the T. It's the best place to listen to music. Then you've got Floribama down at the Florida line, all kinds of places to go. But they're right on the beach, and if you're out there, you can see stuff. Now, you have to remember there's a Naval Air Station in Pensacola, so you're going to see a lot of stuff that looks suspicious that they're just trying out. When I lived in Destin, we had a base there. Again, there's stuff that is not public knowledge that they test, and they test it there. So, a lot of Navy fighter jocks. I mean, that's what they do. But it's interesting because, not one of these reports was ever mistaken for anything else. And I find that interesting. And, you had people that were just randomly out and about and stuff. One of the videos that they let me download was just somebody filming in their backyard. It's what it looks like. And it's what I do all the time. I've got trees. And so they were filming the craft going between the trees. There were multiple craft, 2 of them. And, I wish I could talk to Phyllis right this minute. Phyllis Galdi has been Fate magazine for decades, and she has just sold the magazine. And Matt, the new owner, is a fantastic human. So this is a big deal for everybody that's been involved with this, because I hope Matt feels validated now in buying the magazine. It's such a great magazine. But he was validated before he ever got it. It's all good. I think that this is such a big deal. My dad, y'all heard me talk about the paratroopers. We were all barbecuing after jumps in our side yard, and I saw a craft. Wasn't moving. It was not a helicopter. I just watched them all jump out of helicopters all day, right? I know what a helicopter looks like. There was no noise, and that was the first time I saw something that I remembered. And this is going to be a fun show. But, I saw stuff like that in those files. And you can just go on there, peruse everything, enjoy everything. And some of it will trip you out. They have PDF files, which I also cannot share here. But you can go look, and I can tell you how to. And I'm gonna. I already did. But anyway, what I think is going to be the most interesting thing is these people are going to be talking about this stuff. The news media are, people like me all over the world are talking about this. There's some people that don't care what happens, and they're probably sharing a lot of these files. I am a law-abiding citizen. I do not want to go to a federal prison for showing a video just because I wanted to show it. Carl will vouch for that because he doesn't want to go with me. But it's just one of those things that I had no idea that they were going to be so strict on this. I mean, I'm not going to fuss. They opened the files. They downloaded them. I've shown some of the videos already. This number 3 release is the only one I've seen that said no. And I haven't gotten into it enough to understand why. So I do want to tell you some of the things that I found. And I also want to say that I'm a member of the Things Network. And there was a conversation earlier about whether Masonic lodges are haunted or not. They are. I investigated the one in Key West, and there was actually some weird mojo in there. So be careful if you go to that one. But I love haunted locations, and that's something else that we'll talk about later. But relevant to this, the files are terrific. I am going to come over and see what I have over here. Carl, I do want to show one of those. It doesn't matter which one of them, because there's, 4, 5. And they're not long. Maybe that's why they let us use them. Nobody stopped me downloading these. So we can just go from the first one.
And now at 1 hour at this time, I now have 1 hour and 21 minutes, and I am observing John's fireflies drifting away from me. I can observe them appear to be departing from the spacecraft and drifting out to the rear. I can see some of them. A considerable distance out to the rear. Sun is coming up behind me. I'm beginning to get the glow on the clouds. Fireflies appear to be white, very whitish, with almost a green like real fireflies. Clouds on the earth below are changing color, are getting quite light. And I am now on the day side. The sun is not yet quite up, and I am observing stars. The earth is light below me. The sun is still behind me. The sky looks dark above me, and I can see stars very distinctly.
And that is one of the NASA files. And you will find these files contain video and documentation from just about every agency that is oriented toward the sky. You know, Air Force, Marines, DOD, NASA. It's coming from everywhere. And there are so many of these files. What I have found is that the PDFs, the videos are sexy, okay, because you can look at it, you can hear it, you're vicariously interacting with these craft. But the PDF files are where you find the meat on the bone. They're so detailed. And a lot of them, you can tell they came from a period of almost disinformation or, hiding things in military speak, or that's the best way I know how to describe it. And, it's like I had said, when I was about to go into 6th grade, I saw what was not a helicopter in the sky. All the paratroopers that were at our barbecue said, "Oh, that's a helicopter." And I'm like, "It's not moving. There's no sound. That's not a helicopter." And then that night I had an experience, in our bedroom. I shared a room with my sister, and it was very disconcerting because I was going in 7th grade. I mean, hello. But I've always been fascinated by this, and I am having the best time, and you will too if you go online and look at these files. But I want to show a more recent video. So let's go see what's over here. If they're going to come and arrest me, they're just going to come and arrest me. This is what I see at my house sometimes. And I'm wondering what that person was thinking, because, you know, we see when you see something and you know that's not supposed to be there, it's very, you can get weirded out pretty easily. And those were two fireballs, what we would call fireballs as far as the visual effect. Just wandering through. And I think that's cool. There's no way that they are like a fireball meteor type thing, because those babies are slow. They're just out for a Sunday drive, right? And when the people filming weren't saying anything, there was no commentary going on with that. And I think that for somebody to have the wherewithal to get their phone, start filming, and just let it roll, that's pretty disciplined, really. Because I would have been going, oh my God, I can't believe I'm seeing this. This is so cool, blah, blah, blah. But, I am kind of emotive. But it's just so neat that people are getting this and that we're getting to know that they are, because these files have been sitting there. I guarantee there's something from 1947 in there. In fact, I know there is, because in the PDF files, I found a 1947 document. Can't put it up here, but you can go look at it. I'm serious. It's some cool stuff. I think that the most unusual thing that I found, I'm going to put my specs on for a second, because I have notes, but, there's one, and I could not get the graphic to download or to transfer with the PDF file. But this was in Fort Carson in Colorado. I think that's Colorado. But, it's one of the reasons that people flip out on this stuff is, I guess, out of 1,500 sightings, all but 20% they found an explanation for. It's a pretty good percentage. And it's a pretty good percentage if you're looking for anomalies. Absolutely it is. But they probably felt pretty good that they found explanations for stuff. But what they had happen was this, it was a big craft. They made a model kind of it, and because they wanted to be able to show what it was, and they called it the potato. It does kind of look like a potato, but it was white, and it was oblong, and it was kind of wasn't really shiny or didn't look like an airplane. So that's what they called it, was the potato. And I just found it interesting that that was at a base, that was on a base. And it's they look at these, and the military is really quick on this, right? Because they're looking for an attack. They don't know, if you have something like with that NASA file, and we can play that later if we want to, but that NASA file where it was a Gemini craft, and they're going out, and the pilot of that mission radios in and says, "We have a bogey." And the radio operator goes, "Did you just say you have a bogey?" And the guy said, "Yeah, it's right there." So, when we started leaving Earth, they started noticing. And I think, as somebody whose feet are firmly on the ground and they won't let me go in space because I'm old and stuff, I find it fascinating. I wish that I had understood that that was something women could do when I was in high school. Because what could be better, right, than being able to take off with a rocket strapped to your butt and go and look at stuff up close and personal. I totally get why astronauts do that. But I just think that would be the greatest job in the world, other than being a mom, which I've done. So now I'm ready for a different one. I can go do that. But, you know, these people that do that are really rocket scientists, excuse the pun. But they're, you know, they've been in combat training, they've been in fighters, they have been, they know how to do everything. They understand physics and everything else that you need. You know, if they're up there and their radios go out, their communications go down, they're the only ones getting them home. That's why they have to be those people, right? And those people don't have hallucinations and make up stories and try to get attention and try to, you know, try to make a rumble about themselves. They are dedicated scientists and engineers, and, you know, they don't panic. They're combat trained, most of them, a lot of them. And, you know, these are not people that are prone to fancy. So when that pilot said, I have a bogey, they knew he did. They just didn't know how in the world he had a bogey up there. So that was interesting. But I'm excited, guys. I'm having the best time with these files. But at any rate, can we play something else, Carl? I promise I won't run all through all of them. Oh, that's a separate one. This one is weird. That one is so weird. But I didn't mean to go into the next one, but, you know, I thought that looked like, it was like, hello, here I am. I am a UFO. I'm just here. I'm just here to entertain you. And it was a very unexpected movement, right? I mean, because our craft go like that. Unless you are in a helicopter, and then you can look like a grasshopper. But it's really so interesting to me that with the different things that we're going to see tonight, there's not a rhyme or reason behind their behavior. It's just everything is pretty much its own animal. And, you know, then you start to think, well, are those different cultures? Are those different worlds? Are those just different planets? You know, there's a great big universe. You know, we watched that comet come for weeks, right? And then we watched that comet go for weeks. And so things don't really, you know, zip if they're natural objects. They're moved by whatever. And, you know, the motion that is established just keeps on going. And so when you see something flit around like the first video there, it's pretty wicked cool, I think. So if you look at the different craft, if you look at the different behaviors, if you look at the possibilities that are out there. This is a great big universe, and we haven't even explored any of it. We've been to the moon as far as getting people out there. We have put something on Mars whose cameras fortunately still work. But as far as getting us any farther, we haven't figured that out yet. Apparently, it's very complicated because we've got some of the smartest people in our world working on this, and they're doing a good job because look how far we've come since the 60s. And then, you know, when people say, well, we went to the moon, but we never went back. Well, there are people that say we were told not to. I don't know if I believe that, but I do question that a world that had people like, you know, Columbus, there are a lot of people like him, Lindbergh, people that go all over our planet, intrepid travelers. I mean, they're pulled by their love of adventure, and that's where we come from, are people like that. And we haven't been back to some place we know we can get to. We haven't tried to colonize on it so that we could do research from there. We're great about setting up research. We don't even have a rover there. Got one on Mars, not one on our moon. So that's something to question. And, you know, it's, and I'm not dissing our space agency. I'm dissing our government, because we do have intrepid travelers that want to go and do these things. They're not the reason we don't. So let's support them. Let's start pushing. Yeah, we see this. Other people are doing it. Why can't we? Let's go. And I think that's probably my take on that. But at least go to the moon. We can have a jumping off spot. You know, we can get to the moon, then we're already on Mars. What about Jupiter? I know. Everybody says that it's all these gases and everything's so bad, like Saturn. But do we really know that? Mark D'Antonio will probably tell you, yes, Kat, we certainly do. But you know what? He's a lot smarter about science than I am. But I'm a lot smarter about some things than he is. He just would never admit that. I'm kidding, Mark. But, you know, why haven't we? Something to ponder, right? So I think that's something that I'm going to be asking the next science person I have on here, which will be on the 12th. Rich Hoffman is coming back from SCU. He's one of the smartest and nicest people I know, and he never minds answering my questions. So you'll have to tune in for that, because, you know, sometimes he will say, I see the craft. I want to know how it works. I want to know this and I want to know that. And he is absolutely right, because, you know, I am coming at it from just a citizen of our planet, somebody that's been really researching this type of topic for almost 10 years. Well, for over 10 years, really, probably most of my life, but doing shows about it for that long. And I want to know. You know, I may not understand the math, I may not understand the science, but I understand a lot. And Rich Hopkins is somebody that can explain that. So we'll get a chance to ask him soon, if I didn't just scare him away. But anyway, I just think it's fun. I think it's wonderful. And I'm going to try to find where I was on we'll do the share screen in just a little while so I can show you how to get into these files and find them. And we're going to go ahead. I'm going to replay that other one, the last one. So Look at that. It goes from being a single light to appearing to be up to 3 lights. Just amazing. And, you know, this should be, yeah, there it goes. See, it's just flitting about. Obviously a fixed camera, probably a ring or something. You see, it just went from point A to point B, just disappeared, and there. And there's one now to the left. And I find it so interesting that they both just were there, weren't there. And that's something that I have noticed with this. A lot of those, like the first video, we saw it just kind of cruising on by. This one is floating around like it's, stepping on hot stuff. And my first thought was, oh, well, that's just, an insect. Well, lightning bugs blink and they don't move that fast. So, and they're yellow. But then there were 2. And I don't think that's an insect, although I do think that was a stationary camera, which could have been a security camera. But I do think that that was absolutely not an insect or 2. But with the way that the distance changed and the zooming up, zooming down, that kind of thing, could have been. I'm not going to rule that out, but I don't think it would be in a DoD file if that were the case. Just saying. But the one that I wanted to see, this one to me is really odd. And there's some documentation with it. I can't show the documentation. But to me, this was very unexpected. But the information with it didn't sound like anybody was shocked. So that made me shocked. So, can I do it or are you going to do it? And I haven't seen anything do that. So that's not true. I have seen a Chinese lantern do that, but they are not red. And also, that went into, I haven't seen it dissipate and then come back and do like that. But again, this was in the UFO files. So it's perplexing a lot of people. There's another aspect to this that's going to be coming up later. But that was interesting to me because it was just there. And then it starts changing. And then it starts, it becomes a hollowed out ring. And then it comes back. And we don't have anything that does that. Chinese lanterns don't come back. And I just found that to be interesting. I love that video. I like the color. I like the way that mountain is lit up. Obviously, there's a town on the other side. And I just thought that was a really good way to see what it looked like. The other two have been up against a black sky, basically. This one is throwing a little light on the subject, if you will. And the fact that it's included in those files means that they didn't have any reason to think that it was anything else. Because these are not just, I feel like if it's in this file system, under this classification, that they're pretty sure that that's not an everyday thing. And when you go on there and you start reading the PDFs that they have as well, then you're going to find so many odd stories and so much good documentation. This is not something that, 1947, Roswell. 1946, Trinity, prior to Roswell, that actually had beings and stuff found with that. And when I interviewed Jacques Vallée about that book, it was really trippy to me that he was he wanted me to interview him. Yay! But it was so interesting because this was a story that had been out for a long time. He wrote a book with Paola Lazur, who is a great writer. And we were talking online about that. I was like, this book is great. I'm so glad that y'all wrote this book. And she said, well, it's such a strange story. And then there had been somebody that was reaching out to me on Facebook, but I don't do a lot of friend requests, but I didn't know the name and I didn't know who it was. But then he had pictures with Stanton Friedman and Kathy Martin. And I was like, well, this must be a really nice man because they're both he was very nice and she is. So I just thought, well, let me go find him. And his last name was the same as the people in the reports about the Trinity crash. And that was also not far from Roswell. It was also the reason that this crash was found was because when the craft came down, it clipped a telegraph wire tower. So the base had communications down, and they went to go find out what happened to their communications, and they found the broken pole, and they found the craft. And two young boys had already found it. They weren't supposed to be out on horses in the middle of the night, but boys will be boys. And so then they saw the military come and, take the craft and the people in it. Two had died on impact, and the other one, the boy had tried to help and take care of. That was the center of the story. And it was not going well. So when that was the crash before Roswell. And so, but Roswell had all this documentation. There was all this stuff going on around it. And I had never heard of the Trinity crash until Jacques and Paola wrote that book. So there's a lot of information out there that even as much as I researched, I had no idea about. And that's what I'm finding with these files. And you will too, because it's such good information and it's such matter of fact. This is it. This is what happened. Boom. Do with it what you will, but this is what happened. These are military reports written by honorable, good, patriotic people. And it's fantastic. And to be honest, I can't believe they released them. And I wish they would give us all permission to just share them everywhere. Maybe that's coming. If it is, I'm going to share them everywhere. But I just think it's such a big deal. Such a big deal. You know what? Before we go, I'll play that Gemini tape. It's really good. But another one that I saw, one of the files was just talking about they had all these sightings. Everybody saw it. You know, there's one that's in the town that my best friend lives in, and well, outside of, and that's Bell Fountain in Ohio. And I was blown away when I saw the name of that town. I bet she doesn't even know about it. But the and I can't show you the article. I'm going to write somebody and ask if I can please do that. But you know, but it was a sighting, and her daddy worked at Right Pat, and so there's a history back there, and then you've got this because Wright Patterson is where they took things, you know, and that is also available in those files. It's one of the places that they took the downed things. But in fact, Lori was on her way home from a paranormal investigation. She and a friend were on their way down. She was taking Vicky home, and they went by Right Pat, and they saw deltas. They saw triangles there, and neither one of them are prone to fancy either. These are some of the most, Lori is definitely one of the most down-to-earth people I know. She is absolutely 100%, boom, that's it. And so she called me and said, we just saw craft. I think it may have been rectangles. I don't know if she's listening or not. But if she is, we need her to put that in. But at any rate, she saw white craft with the lights right over Right Pat. And I was like, you did not. She said, we did too. And she said, I don't know what it was. And I'm like, well, I know what that was. You know what that was. And she was just kind of like, well, but I mean, we weren't asleep. We weren't drunk. We weren't, you know, we were tired, but we weren't exhausted. And, you know, we were just on the way to take Vicky home. And then she was going to go home to Bell Fountain. And I was so blown away. And then to be sitting there going through these files and seeing a case in Bell Fountain, Ohio. And that's going to be fun because as soon as I can share that one, I'm gonna. And I may just get forgiveness instead of permission sometimes. But I'm just always so shocked and so surprised when I see the places where this stuff happens. It's rural America. It's small town America. You get them in the cities, but who can see them? Because there's too much light, right? That gets washed out. And that's why it's the dog walkers. It's the cigarette smokers. It's the people that do shift work and they're out before the sun. It's people that are outside. I sit on my deck. I have dogs. I'm outside a lot. And, so when I get tired of chasing them, I go sit on the deck and watch the sunset or, just read. And it's just interesting what you will see if you look. So there's that. But, I had a sighting from my deck, and an astronomer who is a genius told somebody in front of me that what he had on the camera was I think he said it was the space station. But I was so excited because I saw the same thing on my deck. And I was just blown up. I was so excited. I was just like, it's two cylinders and it's moving together and it's, in tandem, but not right next to each other. It's so cool. I live next to an air refueling wing. I really thought that's what I was seeing. And then I thought, no, this guy told that guy that was the space station. So I ran in the house and I told my husband that I had just seen the space station, which I had been trying to do for months, probably years, and had never managed to. And so now I'm pumped because this just happened. I can't believe I just saw this. So I get online and I tell my friend, the scientist, so I just saw the space station for the very first time. I'm so excited. I've been wanting to, and I waved at the astronauts. And every time I saw the space station, I did wave at the astronauts. They waved back, I'm sure. But it was so much fun because, I'm excited. I'm pumped. I've seen it. And I told y'all wrong. It was not the space station. I thought I was seeing Starlink, okay? Because I did not know how they worked. But anyway, it's still the same thing. I was so wrong. But anyway, so there I am. I've just seen Starlink. I'm pumped. I'm excited. I posted I've just seen Starlink. Everybody's excited for me. I go and I talk to my friend and I said, I'm so excited. I just saw this. And I was in California and we were doing a sky watch and we were looking for Starlink. They had just put a Starlink up, right? So there was Ben Hansen and a whole bunch of people and Mark. And I'm like, that's not what I saw. And Mark said, well, that's a Skylink. And I was like, but that's not what I saw. And he said, well, you said you saw what that other person saw. I said, I did, but that's not what I was told that was. So even with being so excited, because if it wasn't Starlink, then I had seen something. And so had the guy that had the footage from the desert and was told, no, that wasn't what it was, by somebody who would know what it really was. And I was just like, this is crap. This is BS. I cannot believe that somebody is doing this. I've been looking for this thing since they started putting it up. I did, however, find the space station, but it was just so frustrating. And I understand why people who are experiencers of all kinds of stuff, there are people who have experienced aliens besides Al, but there are people that have experienced alien interaction, had relationships, and there are people who have had relationships with people from other places. And, and this is the kind of thing that you get. I was talking to a friend who does a lot of government work. And, it was just like, no, this is crap. So it was all the way back to when I saw what wasn't a helicopter, and everybody was basically like patting me on the head and saying, oh, it's okay. That's a helicopter. No, it's not. And that's twice that I've had really cool experiences and was given bad information. I'm going to say disinformation, because even though that's what I might say if it wasn't a friend, but it was just so crazy. Why? This is why people don't trust the government or its employees or anything. We have known this stuff was in our skies. It's just crazy. Grand Sprague show is called Somewhere in the Skies because they are somewhere in the skies. They show up. And you sit there and you're just kind of like, okay. So everybody that's supposed to be being honest about this stuff is not. There's no way to be able to, get good information in the past because nobody was giving it to us. And now we've got files that are just sitting out there on the internet for us to just go and peruse and look at and read the PDFs about the experiences, see the videos of the craft, see there's so much happening. And how cool is it that we live in this time? I mean, there's a lot of powerful, not right stuff happening. But this is life-changing. This is world-changing. This is stuff that can't be hidden anymore because it's there. And we were given access to it. And once that happens, you can't put a genie back in a bottle unless it wants to go. And I don't think any of us want this to go. I think it's cool. I've got all my Roswell stuff back there. By the way, if you can go to Roswell, go do that. It's so kitschy, but it's really cool. And, there is stuff in desert skies. There is. It's, I'm so used to seeing things that aren't craft. Because, like I said, I live near air refueling. I mean, they go out and practice. I've been, I live near an airport. There's all kinds of stuff that shows up and goes by. And when I lived in Atlanta, I lived by an airport, even though I lived like way outside of Atlanta. But we had a little airport there. And there's always something up. But there is also always other stuff up too. And it's cool when you get to see it. And that's why I was disappointed when I was told that was space station. I mean, not space station, Starlink. And then I actually saw a Starlink and I'm like, it's not. It's not Starlink. But when we have how long have we been listening to our government? How long have we seen people so discredited? So discredited. People have been ridiculed. They've lost their careers. They have lost their lives. They have lost their families. They have, because, oh, well, they must be nuts. These people are crazy. That's a lying son of a gun. And all this time, people knew. Our government knew. Our government was I'm sure our government has interacted with them. There are way too much stories about that. Where there's smoke, there's fire. And, when you have somebody who they know they had an experience, they know they were taken. A case in point would be Travis Walton. Travis was so vilified. He had a real experience. he and some friends were on their way home from work from, cutting wood, cutting trees down, clearing land. That's what it is. Sorry. But, and they see a craft. And Travis gets out of the truck and goes to the craft. Well, then the craft starts to take off. The wash hits him and he goes down. And his friends are like, ah! And they run. And, I'm sure they went to get help. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt there. But Travis was gone for a week, 7 days. And when he showed up, he had not been out and about. He was naked. He was stuck, he was dropped off as he was. They had been trying to heal him. And he has been ridiculed. He's been called everything but a nice person. He has gone through years of, if you're not a believer, then you do not respect him because what he's saying is something that you believe is not possible. And it's not that the people that don't believe him are horrible people. They just have been told all their lives that there's no way this could be real. And here's this man saying it is that he was taken aboard a craft, that he was damaged, that he was being cared for. When he could wake up, he was, the people that were standing there looked like bugs. And it flipped him out. So he started trying to fight them. And they left the room and then came back as Nordics, which are big, tall, beautiful, blonde people, just like our Nordics. So, that's why we call them that. But then, once he was well, he was just dropped off near home. And that sounds crazy, right? Unless you were Travis Walton or somebody that trusted him and knew that he isn't a liar. And, all of his friends actually validated what happened to him. One of them lives here in Alabama. So let's see. Yes, always in timeout. I love that. After being told for 70 plus years that all your sites were just swamp gas and weather balloons, it's hard to find trust. You're damn right it is. You are darn right it is. Because, it's like me. I'm talking to somebody I know who knows me, that I know is an expert on all this stuff. And I'm so excited. I'm telling him and seeing what I saw him tell somebody else was, Starlink. And boy, was I mad. I'm still mad about that. And he knows it. But, it's just so weird that for so long we have been snowed about this stuff. Oh, no. Swamp gas, fireflies, whatever, Starlink, when it's so not Starlink. Wasn't the space station either. And it wasn't an air refueling operation because I have seen that happen and it does not look like that, but it's so cool. Boy, what brave people and very good at what they do. But I'm just mesmerized by all of this stuff. And I'm so excited. And UFO, DOW, Department of War, .gov, UFO, /UFO. And you will find all the things that you want to find. And, I haven't found a way to search by topic. I'm sure there is one. Because I want to find those things that look like two cans stuck together that are not Starlink or air refuelers. It was the coolest thing I've seen. It was like two craft strapped together, traveling in tandem like this. And it was lit from within. It was beautiful. And I was pumped. Like I said, I ran in telling my husband, I just saw it. And then that wasn't what it was. I was told it was something else. So It wasn't either Starlink or the space station. So I'm going to miss the space station when they bring that down. But that's another story. But there's so much out there. There's so many different kind of craft. There's so many. I haven't seen, to my knowledge, I haven't seen any of the deltas, the triangles. I'm still waiting on that. But maybe someday. Maybe soon. We don't know. But, and I have to tell you that always in timeout moniker is so good. Absolutely so good. But, I do know that with all this stuff coming out, what else? What else? Was that? You don't think they paid $19,000 for a hammer, do you? What's in the underground bases? What's in vaults? What's in, what do we have? And why do they not want us sharing these files? Why do you have to go there? Somebody can't just give it to you. I can't just show just anything here. The PDF files were serious. Don't do this. And, they're out there. You can go look at them. I just can't run very much stuff here. And with the US government, it's not always a good idea. Usually I, do it and just beg forgiveness, right? I'm not doing it with this because there's all kinds of comments about, do not do this. This is ours. Do not put this on your stuff. Do not do this. And since I don't think I look good in orange, really, not going to do it. And they probably have the nastiest material for their little jumpsuit things too. They're feds. But I just think it's so cool. And I'm going to show another one. I know we might run out, but that's okay. We'll just look at them again. Now, this is obviously in the same area as the last one, but it's different. That was not the one that I thought it was. I hate when I do that. Let's see. I can't see with them on. I can't see with them on. Well, that was a different one. Look at this one. You know, that to me was one of my favorite ones because A, there was enough time for you to see the behavior of it, which I think is cool. But B, because I've seen that and I filmed it with my camera phone, and it's not always a great picture. But I don't think, because how that kept coming into focus and losing it and coming into focus and losing it, I think it was emotion. And to me, that was one of the more interesting things that I've seen. And it lasted so long. And it was obviously in motion. I don't know. I just found they didn't have as many videos with this release as they did with the other two. This one was primarily PDFs and records. And well, the records were in PDF form. And there's a lot of files there, and they're interesting. And what got me so surprised was they actually included a 1947 document, but it was not from Roswell. It was random. And I'm still fooling with that. But when I found out that I couldn't put it up here, I moved on to other stuff looking for more video. But I don't know. If I were a doubting Thomas, I would say there's no way this stuff is real. You know, there's no way that they would be doing this right now. There's no way that, you know, this has been the holy grail for almost a century. And the fact that, I mean, if this is the worst that they had, if this was what they thought was going to start tripping us out to the point of, you know, like the War of the Worlds broadcast where people were jumping out of windows and stuff. I mean, because it was such a realistic broadcast, I don't think there's anything here to trigger that response. You know, I haven't seen anything yet in the PDFs to trigger that response. it's almost like they're afraid that somebody's going to recognize something, or somebody's going to come up and say, I can't believe you did this to, I don't know what they're afraid of. And I feel like, for all intents and purposes, we've been lied to for no reason. And we have been lied to. If people came out and said this was their experience, they were ridiculed, they were shamed, they were, cast out of society, they were unstable. And because of this. And it's just tragic, I think, that nobody in our government trusted society enough to think that we could deal with it. I really think that, and I have said this for 2 decades and people laugh at me, but I really think War of the Worlds was a trial run. I really do. Because, it was very volatile information, or a volatile concept at the time that they presented it on the radio show as a real scenario. And people did not realize that it wasn't. And that's why everybody was jumping out of windows and tripping out and just, oh my God, it's the end of the world as we know it. And, so they chose to opt out on their own. And I think that tripped the government out. No, it tripped the media people out. And so, I think that alone is the reason that we have been lied to all this time. And it hasn't just that they've been holding things back. We've been lied to. We have had people who have experiences. We have abductees all over the world. We have people in Tibet that are seeing this. We have people in Anaheim who, if they were in a dark area, they could see this, not in Anaheim. But, if you go to Contact in the Desert, you can go into Joshua Tree, you can see these things. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. And it's really just one of those things that, why? Why? Were you afraid that people were going to say, you can't protect us, so you can't be in this job? Well, there's not a human that would have known what to do, but the leaders were, they didn't know what to do. They knew that this was more, they had more speed than what we have, right? They had more initiative. They were off their planet and going places. So there's that. And we were trying so hard to be. And you sit there and you look at the Star Trek show movies where, first contact was pretty interesting. And I have been a Star Trek fan for 50 years. And it's just one of those things that I grew up dreaming of being able to interact with people from other places. I grew up dreaming of being able to fly into space. I grew up dreaming that there were going to be people different from us that we could learn from and interact with and become friends with. That the Federation would turn out to be something that would be a real thing in the future, that I would get to see that. And I just love the concept. That's why I love to travel. That's why I love meeting new people. That's why I love going to conferences where there are people who are experiencing this. And it's such a blessing to get to talk to them. And I have seen people that I'm absolutely positive were hybrid people who had, they were not just human. And you could tell that they were not just human. I've I know someone who says that she had a child with an abductor, that she became pregnant. I wasn't sure what I thought of that at first. And then I talked to her more, and I believe her. I just don't understand why this was so hidden. Why nobody until now trusted humans enough to let them know, yeah, there's something coming here from somewhere. We've been documenting it for 40 years, 50 years, 100 years. We've been doing this for, this long. I'm not finding a lot of interaction yet. I'm looking for it. You can look for it too. It's not hard. And it's DOW.com. And look for UFOs. It's really easy. And, I sit there and I think, why? Why now? And I'm so excited that this is here because maybe, we have information now. You can never have too much information. I'm a firm believer in that. But it's just one of those things that I hope that this makes people not so quick to blow off others who say that they have had experiences. Because even I, with the knowledge I have, the interaction that I have with so many people who are interested in this topic, with people that are certain they've been abducted, people who go and lecture about their abductions, who write about their abductions, who are very open and giving with the information, people who say they've time traveled. That one blew my mind. There's so much happening, and it's all so hidden and so taboo. There's not anything taboo about having an experience with a different culture. There's not anything taboo about having relationships with people from different cultures. And what if this is just that? It's just that they don't live on our planet, or maybe in our solar system, or, I don't know. But I think that the opportunity to go and learn stuff is just, it would be such a gift. Just to sit down and talk to people who have had experiences is such a gift. And it takes a lot of courage to come forward with that, to be able to say, well, yes, I have talked to somebody. I have had a relationship with somebody. Dolly Saffron, who is one of the coolest chicks I know, she is human, but she is somebody who has since childhood interacted with another culture, and she can fly their craft because they asked her what she wanted to do. She said, I want to fly this. And the person that was in charge of this interaction said, okay, we'll do that. And she is a radio show host too. She's very cool. But it's really something that, oh my God, I would love to have that experience. But just knowing that this is something that might be coming, that interaction might be coming. And, we don't need saviors. We don't need people that are going to come here to, We need people to come here and that we can go to have interaction, to learn from, to understand, to learn about their culture, their lives, to how fun would that be? Or maybe they could teach us to make rocket ships and we could go to other places. They're obviously doing a good job with it. It would be fun. But I just think it's awesome. And I'm so excited that we're going to get to I mean, because there's so many documents, there's so much information, and I just can't believe it. I can't believe we're being given this. And, I don't think this is necessarily pay no attention to the man behind the screen. Okay. I think this is real. I think that they're putting them out like this is the third group in 2 weeks' time. And this one has documents. It's just so cool. I'm excited. I'm so excited. I guess you know that, right? You can pick up on that. But if you could go and do any of this, what would you do? If you could see anything, what would you want? What would you want to come out of this? Because you may be having to think about that. Being aware, a lot of people have been aware that they were there forever. A lot of us are just now becoming aware. And a lot of people won't believe it because it's Trump. That's what it is. But, these files are old. Some of these files are very old. And it's real. Like I said, I have friends who interact with these people. Dolly Saffron flies with them and has since she was a kid. Like me, she's not a kid anymore. But I just think it's fun. And I think it's fascinating. And I just think that this is such a good time to be alive. We've got all these people here in our country celebrating, playing soccer, football, and enjoying Buc-ee's, enjoying Waffle House, all things that they think are American, right? And, we've got, I love Scotland. I was watching the Scottish, the tartan. Oh dear, I forgot the name. Somebody help me. Tartan is what they call their soccer team. But anyway, they were piping them through the airport to put them on the plane, which is like they pipe into battle. I love Scottish culture. But, I'm sitting here watching all these people, and a lot of them probably think we're like aliens compared to their societies. But, it's just so fun to be able to interact with people of different cultures that that are here. People from all over the world are in America right now for this tournament. And that's really cool. And what's the difference? They're from someplace we've never been, experienced. I've never been to Paraguay. I've been to Scotland, Belize, and Canada. So, it's which are very varied places. Toronto is like New York, very similar, safer. And, Belize is like the Alabama coast. And Scotland is like nothing else on the planet. So when I start thinking about stuff like this, I think, well, the first time I went to Scotland, at least I spoke the language kind of. They don't talk like me. I don't talk like them. I'm kind of a novelty too. And, but we interacted. I have friends there. We, broke bread together. We became even better friends. We went to all these different places. I had some very bizarre experiences from the paranormal side of things, but it was just interacting with people that had different life experiences from me. And it was just wonderful. I go every time I get a chance. My poor husband is just like, "You're going back?" Yeah. And, I'd go any of the places I've been if there weren't so many more to see. But Scotland, I'll always go back. Haste you back, as they say. I try. But there's so much to be said for being exposed to different cultures, to be exposed to different lifestyles. Every place that you go is different from what you're used to. I had no idea they made electric kettles. I've got one in my kitchen now because I like hot tea. And there's no way that I would ever eat haggis. Well, I did try it. Won't do that again. Sorry. Sorry, Lynn. But, there's just no way that I think this is going to be that much different. They just don't live here. They may look different. Pretty sure they sound different. Unless they've got technology that can make that better. But there's so many opportunities. They know so much more than we do, or they wouldn't be able to do what they're doing. But maybe we know more about other stuff than they do. There's always going to be a yin and a yang. It's just the way that works. And it's really very interesting to me what we're going to find out. And exciting. If you could meet an alien that didn't freak you out, try to eat you, or just look so different that you couldn't help staring and being rude and worry that you upset them, what would you do? What would be the first thing that you thought would matter? Would you be afraid? Would you see it as the opportunity for a multicultural experience? Would you run screaming down the street? I might run screaming down the street if they look terribly different. I would be, and then I would offend everybody, and then I would be dead probably. I'm just kidding. But it's something to think about because it's a very real possibility, I think, right now. I'm pretty excited. And I do have some, trying to not bang everything around. But, one of the things that I don't know if I said that I wrote down because I didn't want to forget it, because I will forget. But with all of these sightings, they have had answers on all but 20%, had explanations. And that was out of 1,500 reported sightings. So, 20% of 1,500 were probably real. They couldn't find an explanation for it. It's a pretty good number. So, one of the things that I was interested in, the first reporting that I found, well, obviously the 1947 incident, right, at Roswell, but approximately 1,500 official reports of sightings received and approximately 20% not explained. And that must have really got my attention because I wrote it down more than once. I'm trying to find this. Oh. So the Air Technical Intelligence Center analyzes anomalous saucer reports, and Brigadier General U.S. Air Force Maxwell was the Air Force person dealing with all of this. And there was a intelligence advising committee as well. But the 11-4-52 was when the Air Technical Intelligence Center was put in place. And so they went from 47 to 52, just kind of winging it, apparently. Seat their pants. No real big people doing that. But that was such a weird time for our planet. You know, the 50s were the come out of the wars era and start back with your family, start back with getting everything organized, getting kitchen appliances that were amazing, you know, being able to refrigerate things, to be able to, you know, was air conditioning then? I think not. It came a little later maybe. But, you know, the world was changing. We were changing as humans because we were having different life experiences than what our parents had had and our grandparents had had. And that's still happening today. But in the middle of all of this change and transition, we've got UFOs coming. And people are ridiculing, you know, except for the people that knew they were real. J. Allen Hynek was somebody who knew they were real. He had interactions. That was his work. And that's pretty cool. You know, there were people that were in place to start implementing, if there was going to be interaction, implementing interaction. If there was going to be catastrophic problems, they were in place to start handling those too. You know, we had people that knew that this stuff was real. We have people that made a good living by not letting us know that this was real. And so when we start now looking at this, you know, people wonder why we don't trust our government. I wonder. You know, we have been taken for a ride so many times and, you know, not even kissed, okay? Just left out hanging with all of this stuff happening around us and being told that there's no possible way this could be real. There's no way these people are anything but psychotic. This did not happen. That did not happen. No. They weren't taken aback. They weren't taken on board a craft. Obviously, they were just, you know, drunk having blackouts. There's so much that's been going on and that's been going wrong with how our government has treated us. And, you know, it's just so bizarre to think that just because somebody came up and said, oh yeah, we're going to release those files, do it now. That's a thing. That's a thing. That's all it flippin' took for us to be, you know, made aware that yes, there are decades of files there. There are decades of interaction there. There are decades of seeing other craft, interacting with other craft. When you start getting into the PDFs, you're going to find a lot of stuff. There's so much. The videos are cool. The imagery is cool. But the documents are cool. And I haven't gotten into a lot that didn't have redactions. I'd love to know what those are. Maybe I'll find out. But so the files are certainly better than the highly sanitized files of Project Blue Book. That's the darn truth. And you know, it's so funny because they are improving slowly. But again, I say it's because we have a disruptor. We have a disruptor who said, no, we're not going to leave this. So if nothing else, thanks for that. You know, I'm I'm very appreciative of the fact that these got released. They should have been released 50 years ago, at least. And, then people wouldn't have been afraid to talk and to share their experiences. I feel, and I do know that not everybody had the best experiences. For Travis, at least they didn't leave him dead. Would have been hard to explain a dead human with people watching. But, it's just, there's so many reasons to question the people that thought we couldn't handle this knowledge. We probably couldn't handle this knowledge because they were afraid of it. They were who thought that if we realized that there were other ways to be, if we thought there were other worlds, if we thought there were ways for us to be more empowered, then their little circus would have to pack up. I am not a big fan right this minute of big government. So this is crazy. We have just been left in the dark, and the people that were having experiences, and they have been ongoing experiences. It wasn't just Roswell. There's been stuff happening the whole time. And, basically we get patted on the head and say, oh, no, you're fine. There's not anything here. Don't fuss. I'm a Southern woman. People have done that to me my whole life, right? But it's just not right. Who gets to say that they're better than us and they get to have this knowledge and they get to have this interaction, and they are the people that have the power to withhold all of this knowledge that's available to us? Why can't we interact with these people that are coming here? Why, are they getting the lotto numbers from these people coming? Why are they gatekeeping on this? There is a reason that we weren't allowed to know this. And I cannot think of a good one. I really can't. Because if we don't interact, then if we don't know, then we don't miss that interaction, right? Now we know. And I'm pretty frustrated with the fact that people that had no business doing so hid this. It's just wrong. I don't care who you are. And the fact that now we've got all this information, and now I'm wondering, is this really all? Is this really it? So far, we have 3 releases. I know there's more coming because there's 100 years worth of stuff. Probably more. But for this country, probably not too much more. I'm absolutely certain 1947 wasn't the beginning. It was just a crash. They just miscalculated something. So, where do you think it started? Where do you think, if you were going back in time, where would you think that this started being a thing? I think since the beginning of time. I think that other people probably lock their doors when they go by us now. I don't know. But really, there has to have been interaction all this time. 1947 was not the first time there was a craft here. For God's sake, Ezekiel left the planet in a spinning, flaming chariot, right? So, it was Elijah, wasn't it? But, biblically, there was stuff. And They left it in the Bible. But we couldn't be told that it was happening to us. There's something wrong with that. And I really am so fed up with the people that we pay to lie to us. No, we're the boss. We write the checks. We pay their salaries. We provide their benefits. Not one person in Washington, D.C. would have a job without the American people. And sometimes they just forget that. And we are the motivating factor behind everything. Our Constitution says we the people. We the people are the game changers. And we have a chance. You know, we have a disruptor who's come into office who just said, make this so. Boom. There was somebody at the Department of Defense /War who said, yes, sir, I'll do that. Some of them are redacted. A lot of them are redacted. And I don't know exactly why. I'm still reading the documents. But the information is there. And all the way through. You know, I know several abductees. Calvin Parker, who has passed away, God bless him, was abducted in Pascagoula, Mississippi, when he was a teenager. And he had just started a job, and one of the people that worked there said, let's go and do something. So they left work and went to go fish. And bada boom, bada bing, a craft comes down. And in this one, the guys looked like the Michelin Man, but with claw hands, like pinchers hands. And they shoved something in their nose. And then Calvin was a ridiculously wonderful 19-year-old who said, we're going to the police. And Charlie said, what? And Nick said they'd out of work. So they went to the police. The police put them in a room. They had, it was an interrogation room, and they had a tape recorder under the table. Charlie and Calvin didn't know that. They're talking about what happened, and Calvin's tripping out because he's young, and this happened. And they have blood on them because they stuck something in their nose. But anyway, the police had the recordings of that and realized this was a real thing. And Calvin hid until, I guess I met him 6 years ago. And it was great. He was a wonderful human. He was the only person in all of Phoenix that sounded like me. We were at the UFO Congress, and he and his wife, and we became friends. And when I would speak at conferences, I would mention Calvin because he really was salt of the earth, a person that had no interest in this, didn't ask for this, was just gone fishing. And he was damaged. He was emotionally damaged because they physically damaged him. He was terrified to talk about it. He didn't for the longest time. And he hated that it happened to him. But I don't know if he would have hated it so bad if he knew that other people were having experiences too. He felt picked out. He felt like, for whatever reason, this was just an isolated moment, and he hated it. And, you know, because he didn't think this was a real thing, and then all of a sudden it was. I would hate to be sandbagged and walk into an experience like this and not know that there were other people around, other races, other species, whatever. And yeah, because their craft looked like an egg. It was egg shaped. Different craft. There's so many different craft. But, you know, if you don't believe, if you don't know, if you haven't been told that, you know, okay, we're not the only show in town. There are other people from other places. You might see a craft. You might meet them. Don't be afraid, you know, whatever. Or maybe be afraid. But it was because there's no controlling it. And I think that a government that doesn't trust its citizenry cannot possibly trust them to tell them something that would indicate that that government doesn't have any control over protecting them. And I think that is probably the whole basis behind the secrecy of the UFO world. Because, you know, the government takes your money, but they give some of it back to other people to take care of them. And then, you know, you'll get some at the end of the year if you're, you know, making enough or paid enough. If you pay too much in, we'll give you some back. But they like to be seen as the providers. They like to have citizen dependency. And when they have a situation in this instance where there is stuff coming, we've known there's stuff here, but they couldn't admit it because that would mean that they weren't in control and they didn't have any way of defending against it. And I think that's why we've been lied to for almost a century. At least almost a century. And, you know, I've talked to so many physicists, rocket scientists, you know, average person on the street that had an experience that, you know, comes up in conversation at the grocery store for whatever reason. I've talked to so many people who have been, you know, head in the game on this. They have been on it. Stanton Friedman was the primary UFO researcher at Roswell, the first civilian researcher at Roswell. And he was freaking brilliant. One of the nicest men I've ever met. Brilliant. And, you know, he was fighting this battle his whole life almost. And I bet he is, wherever he is, I'll bet he's enjoying the fire out of this right now. Because we've got to have, the government needs to remember who they work for. And it's us. We pay their salaries, we pay their benefits, we, you know, if they get a housing allowance, we pay for that. There is everything that they get is because of the citizenry. And they've been lying to us at least since 1947. And now we know. There's that. But anyway, I go on about the weather, right? But I do want you to know that I will be bringing some more videos. Carl, do we have one left? I think there's one left. Yes. That's the one I couldn't find. Isn't that cool? I think it's cool. It's so pretty. But and what I saw was not dissimilar to that, except that it was solid. It wasn't flickering, and it was white, and it had a connector to it. So they do come in tandem, just like that. So thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you more than you know. If you missed my first 2 shows on this, you can go back and look on the Bill of Rights Network on Facebook, or the Things Network on Facebook, or you can look on the Fate Magazine Radio, Fate Mag Radio YouTube account, or you can find me under Kat Hobson on YouTube also. But those shows were pretty awesome too, if I do say so myself, because it was just great information, right? So we'll see you next week. Same cat time, same cat channel. I have Rich Hoffman coming on with me, and that's going to be such a good show. Thank you for being here. Have a good night.